Hi, my name is Eileen Davidson, and this is my first experience today at the annual scientific meeting for Canadian Rheumatology Research. Today I am with Nevena Rebic from UBC, who is doing research on social media and what it can do for those who are living with arthritis.
Yeah. It's great to be here with you. We're friends outside of this too. Just a little note, so it's very comfortable to be having my first interview with you here.
Yeah, and I was myself really excited to be interviewing you because you are involved in so many studies that kind of hit close to home for me as a patient living with rheumatoid arthritis and being a mother, especially with when I was diagnosed 5 years ago. One of the first questions I asked my rheumatologist was, can I still have children with this disease?
And that's kind of I guess my main research project and how I'm kind of stepping into the rheumatology world. So I actually did my pharmacy degree before I started my master's, and then I got in touch with Nevena, who does a lot of work in rheumatology and pregnancy, and that was kind of the main things, and I guess we'll go back to kind of talk about some of the research that led to it, but a lot of my thesis work is around that question and really the patient experience of, so you've been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, you're taking medications for your RA, and now you're wondering, hey, can I start a family? What is this going to look like? What steps do I need to take? And because research in general, in any condition, there's very little research done in the pregnant population, because, especially drug research, because we're so scared of what it might do. And then the after effects of it is that we're often looking at those cases of women who have taken drugs anyway to kind of infer whether we're able to stay on medication or not, which is, it's challenging on either end of that. And it's really challenging for the patient when you don't have, when that information isn't clear and it's not out there, when you're trying to go through that decision-making process. So that's a little bit about what my thesis research is about.
So where is that information at now with your research?
So right now I'm actually doing, my thesis research is around actually talking to women with rheumatoid arthritis who are at various stages in the pregnancy kind of decision-making space. So that might be really early on, where they're young, they're just starting to think about having a family and whether they want to do that or not and what that would look like. Or those of them that are currently pregnant or who have been pregnant and had to go through that decision-making process. And everyone's experiences are a lot different, and there's a lot of different factors that come into it. But a lot of it is about sort of the support that you get from your community and your healthcare team, and and how you get information to help you make those decisions, and how and that really influences how confident you feel in what you're doing.
That's really important. And you were utilizing social media to gather some of this information. Can you please tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I did a oral presentation at the Canadian Arthritis Research Conference, which was just before the CRA, and I talked about some of the work that I did with actually a PharmD trainee, where we went to Reddit, and we were like, you know what? Patients with any condition are just like ourselves. They spend a lot of time on different social media platforms, and Reddit is actually one of those spaces where you can post anonymously and you can say a lot and have very thorough discussions. So we found that there's a lot of people on there talking about a lot of different things, but also the experience of rheumatoid arthritis, and then thinking about pregnancy and sort of those experiences and sharing them. So we went to Reddit and we actually did a search. We found all the threads that were related to this conversation from 2008 to 2018, and then we did what we call qualitative analysis. So we looked at what was being said, and we kind of grouped it into themes, and we kind of did like a bit of a summary of like what it looks like to be in that process, to be seeking information on Reddit, and to also be kind of sometimes connecting for the first time with people who are having these similar experiences, and getting kind of that personal, the personal stories, and having that maybe inform some of what your next steps are.
And it's really great using the internet to further your research, because you can reach the client or the patients that are in the rural areas that necessarily can't make it into the research centers. So that's really quite interesting.
We're actually doing that with my thesis project, where we're recruiting people through social media, and then we're also interviewing them online. So it's really, that breadth of experience and across the country has been really neat.
If anybody's interested in partaking in this research, how can they do so?
They can go to tinyurl.com/mothers, so MOTHERS UBC, so Mothers UBC, and you'll go straight to our consent form where you can have, it has a bit of a summary about what the research is about, but essentially, if you're a woman in Canada living with rheumatoid arthritis and you're anywhere between in your reproductive years, we'd love to chat with you, and I'm hoping to chat with women who have had many different types of experiences, and we're also doing it kind of interviewing participants in many different ways. So we're conducting focus groups, we're doing individual interviews, and we're really kind of digging in deep.
Wow, such great work that you're doing, because I would really, honestly, I don't like seeing a woman not being able to experience the joy of motherhood because of their disease. This disease holds enough back from us, so it's horrible having to even just think about, can I have children with this disease? So that's really awesome that you're doing this. But what challenges did you encounter when measuring the effects of social media?
The effects of social media?
When doing your research, is there any problems that come up when you use social media for your research? Like, what are the problems with that?
I think the way that I think about social media is kind of like a jumping off platform, and that's what I tried to convey during my presentation. Is it's a great place to kind of see what people are talking about in the space that you're interested in, and then going from there and kind of following it up with research studies into different methodologies that are maybe what you would call a little more concrete, or what people may refer to as more rigorous science in a sense. But I think, there's always limitations with it. People are posting anonymously, and you're taking people with by their word of like, yes, I have a diagnosis and this has been my experience. But at the same time, those limitations come with when you're recruiting people online for surveys as well. You are trusting that what they're reporting is true.
Yeah.
So I think there's just there's a little bit of fear and misconception, and that's why maybe it's not used as much. But I think in terms of meeting people where they're at and getting really lived experiences and real stories, it's a great place to start. And then you can think about what else you want to know from there. Yeah.
That is great. Now, you work with patient organizations involved with arthritis. Can you tell us a little bit what it's like to work with patients and how it has shaped your research?
So I got involved early on with the Canadian Arthritis Patient Alliance, and then on that in that group I work a lot with Lori, who's the vice president, I believe, and it's been extremely wonderful because Lori is just great to work with.
She's marvelous. I know her myself.
Yeah, she's great to work with, and she again, anytime you're working with patients, they're able to give you that real world experience that you may be lacking as someone who, no matter how much you try to empathize or kind of learn about your patient's story, I'm not living with rheumatoid arthritis. I may be living with other disease states, and I can kind of infer from other personal experiences, but that's only one step of kind of asking questions that matter. So I think working with patients is critical in asking questions that matter, and then also coming up when you're kind of near the end of that research is whatever your final product is that going to be impactful in a patient's journey. So we worked with Lori, and then some other groups, Mariah from Mama's Facing Forward, kind of going back to kind of the social media aspect of it, connecting with kind of patient outline groups online has been great for kind of recruiting people to the research, but also once you've come up with a product or there's something that you want to share with patients, it's a great way to connect and kind of bridge those gaps. So I think working with patients is essential if you're going to do research that matters.
Absolutely, I definitely agree. And with social media, I think it's been such a great way to draw in the arthritis community and make it really tight, because these women that you're talking about, Mariah and Lori, I haven't met Lori in person, but I actually know Mariah, and it's been through the internet, and being able to connect with these women, and just how beneficial that is for me as a mother myself, and then also being able to find the research that is relevant to someone like me. So that's really great. Now, your use of social media in your research, and the theme of the CRA is a new decade in rheumatology. Do you think that you could see more use of social media in rheumatology research coming in this decade?
I hope so. I think it's a great tool for knowledge translation. So, like, when we think about when you're doing research, it takes so much time, from the point where you get the grant money to doing it to then putting it out in a paper and then a paper being published. That could take years. But when you're thinking about how are you taking the findings that you're having and how are you disseminating that and sharing it with people early, and so that these changes happen more quickly, I think social media is a great tool for that. I think that's the point of what we do. So I think it's great in terms of recruiting people to kind of participate in the research, but also in sharing the messages and the kind of key learning points that come out of it. So I really hope so, and I really hope it gets picked up, kind of more widespread, and in all like the different pockets of research that are out there. Yeah.
All right. And now, do you have any advice for women who are maybe diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and they are kind of curious about looking into maybe having a child, where they could go for that information?
At the end of the day, you, and this is what I hear a lot from interviews that I've been doing, you and your rheumatologist are the one that are kind of managing your care, and that is going to be the expert in your in taking care of your condition and kind of planning for pregnancy. One of the things that's come out of the poster that I'll be presenting and sort of that research, and also in the interviews that I've been doing for my thesis, is that with when you have rheumatoid arthritis or when you have any kind of chronic condition, planning for pregnancy is something that women have to think about more than a woman that maybe doesn't have a chronic condition. And so asking your rheumatologist those questions early, and asking who else you can talk to. Maybe there's a rheumatologist specialist in your community, or a gynecologist, or somebody else who has that information, but going to your experts first. And then I'm also sure that there's online communities that are helpful in terms of personal experience, and also sharing any other sort of real-world resources that you might need.
Especially with women who have gone through it themselves.
Yeah.
Because we have so much we want to say about it.
Yeah, and it's so important to have support in your community. And I find that, those women who haven't met others, they find so much value in meeting people who have gone through the same experiences with them. And so if you can't find those people in your community, your physical environment, finding them online is a great kind of other option for that. Yeah.
All right. Now, is this your first CRA?
Yes.
And what are you enjoying and learning about it so far?
It's very clinical. There's a lot of pull everywhere, and they ask a lot of clinical questions, and I'm like, but I think what I'm really enjoying is getting connected with different people who are doing different things. I've been connected with a mentor that has been extremely fantastic in just connecting me with other clinicians who work in rheumatology and pregnancy. And so I think the people that I get to meet, whether it's my other co-investigators or patient partners like yourself, has been fantastic, in those conversations that come out of the sessions that we're going to. And hopefully those end up being collaborations down in the future. Yeah.
We have a question from your viewing party.
Oh my God.
Dr. Marita Vera, Arthritis Research Canada organized for you. So they're asking, how are you involving patient research partners in your research?
So as I said, we work very closely with Lori from Kappa, and we've kind of nurtured that connection from early on. So we got Lori involved in kind of even the conception of creating the question around how are we going to connect with women who have rheumatoid arthritis, and ask them the question of how they've gone through the decision-making process around medication use and whatnot. And so we constantly have conversations about how do we reach different participants, how do we recruit a diversity of participants, are we asking the right questions, and are we asking them in a sensitive way, and how do we, once we've kind of analyzed our results, how do we come up with come out with things and recommendations and maybe tools out of that is really going to be helpful to the patient experience. So people like Lori and Mariah and all the other kind of patients that I've gotten to talk to and patient advocates have been essential to any research that I do. Yeah.
And one more question. Have you seen any feedback on social media regarding childbearing with inflammatory arthritis post-pregnancy and or childbearing concerns? I guess in your lineup, like when you were conducting your research?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I think the question was about child rearing, about post-pregnancy and concerns that people may have that even when they get through their pregnancy about coping with child rearing after they've gotten through the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Pregnancy seems to be the big hurdle, but I think the reader was curious about, about coping. We have a lot of challenges in just dealing with ourselves.
Yeah. No, I think we try to, so a particular paper that we put together in the Reddit space, we were looking at specifically the experience of pregnancy, but one thing that comes out and has been coming out in my thesis work as well is, yes, there's the experience of pregnancy and how you manage your disease and kind of the decisions you're making around medications, but then there's this whole other part that, pregnancy needs more support, but so does the post-pregnancy, because you may experience flares afterwards. It might be, your disease activity might increase, and then you have to think about also caring for this child. And some of, some people, I've seen information, there's been a lot shared about how the challenges around then going through the parenting process when you're also thinking about managing your own health. Mm-hmm. So yes, definitely, and especially another thing that comes up is a lot about the decisions around breastfeeding and medication decisions in that space as well, and also when you're not really in a space where you can make the decisions that you really want to and to have the pregnancy experience that you really want to. So yes, that has been kind of the whole spectrum from planning to experiencing pregnancy to the post-pregnancy state. There's been a lot of stories shared both online and with the participants that I've been talking to, and there's a lot of need for more support in all those areas.
And for people who are at the conference that wants to support you, where are you presenting tomorrow and what are you presenting?
Oh, jeez. So I'm presenting, tomorrow I'm presenting a poster, I think at 3:15 in the poster space outside. And I'm actually presenting a review that we did of the qualitative literature, so studies that actually interviewed women who have different types of inflammatory diseases about pregnancy and about their information needs in that space. And so we've kind of summarized what the primary literature is out there to date, and we have a great, and we've used that as kind of a stepping stone for the thesis research that I'm currently doing. So if you want to know a little bit more, and it kind of includes information related to that previous question a lot more, then you can come see my poster and kind of the visual representation that I've come up for that. So I believe it's called Walking into the Unknown, and then something about a systematic review. And I don't have the poster number to date, but hopefully that's enough to look it up.
Well, thank you so much for doing this work as somebody who has come through all the concerns that it is to be a mother with RA. So thank you.
Thank you for interviewing me.
You're welcome.